Well, let's have a conversation, Chris. 10 years ago, the idea that adults, schools and the media would combine to create an environment that actively encourages, not supports, but encourages children to be confused about their bodies at particularly vulnerable points in their life and to reject their bodies to the point that they want to surgically alter them, well, that was unthinkable. No one from any other point in human history would understand why so many people have been convinced that it's kind and essential to facilitate a medical industry that is profiting from disfiguring children. Now, you've called this a child abuse scandal and a medical crisis. Is it being led by children who genuinely have come to this decision on their own by and large, or is it more of a thing led by adults and perhaps the medical industry?
Yes, of course, this is led by adults. This is led by the media, the government, these TQ organizations. This is really something that took off really around 2010, around the time gay rights were won. And a lot of people said there would be this slippery slope, and they've been proven to be correct, because as soon as gay rights were won, the new focus came to making what is really a mental illness into a civil rights issue. And there's been hundreds of millions of dollars, billions for sure, actually, pumped behind this movement. But there's no such thing as a transgender child. It's all a lie. Nobody can even define what it means. And no child on their own would ever believe that they were born in the wrong body unless someone in society put that idea in their head in the first place.
Well, and the people who are, like the environment that children are in these days, we were just showing some photographs there. Their classrooms are now full of activist flags about adult sexual concepts and gender identity. When I went to school, Chris, we didn't have that in our classrooms, and no one was having this as a topic of discussion. Now everyone has their own pronouns, everyone is experimenting with their identity instead of trying to focus on their grades. Is that, do you think, leading to what is essentially a craze? I don't know if you remember, we had crazes at school when I was going. We all had yo-yos, and we all had elastics, we all had Furbies. Is this kind of like an identity craze?
This is 100% a craze. This is a social contagion primarily affecting girls. And I'm glad you brought up the pronouns, because a lot of people think they're just being kind when they go along with this pronoun game. But what really are they doing? When you call a girl he, him, you are sending her a message that there's something wrong with her, that she's supposed to be something she's not. That's not a message of self-acceptance, it's a message of self-hate. And now you have the whole school and all the kids and the teachers and the administrators all supporting this message that the child was born wrong. This we should never go along with, because this is harming kids and it's causing them to believe that the only way they're going to find true happiness is by going to the next step after the social transition of new names and pronouns. The next step is puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries, because they believe they're born in the wrong body and that's the only way they're going to find true happiness. This is all, of course, a vicious, terrible, coercive lie.
Well, you're a father. I know you're passionate about this. I mean, I speak to a lot of my friends who have young children, and they are genuinely afraid to send their children to school, not only because their kids aren't actually learning how to read and write and add up anymore, but because they're worried that their kids will come home confused about who they are and desiring to have some kind of change to their bodies. Now, they don't want to send a beautiful daughter off and pick up a boy that's been captured by activism. There is a concern, among the adults working as teachers, that they are using these children to validate their own gender. I mean, TikTok, as you've probably seen, is full of videos from educators, particularly in the US, who are practically in tears because they managed to convince their classroom of 9-year-olds to use neo-pronouns. Now, what do you say to parents? Should they be concerned about their children's welfare inside this modern school system?
So parents should absolutely be concerned. They need to be having conversations with the teacher the first week of school. You should be telling this teacher that you are not okay with your child being taught gender ideology. You need to have these conversations with your own child at an age-appropriate level, of course. You need to arm them with the truth that they're beautiful just as they are, so that when these lies come for them, these lies just bounce off. But it's not even the teachers always. A lot of teachers are still just like us. They are firmly rooted in reality. But all of these schools bring in third-party companies to teach this comprehensive sex education, they call it. And every one of those companies are going to be run by the absolute extremists pushing all of this trans nonsense. So you need to know when that's happening in your kid's school, and if it's going on, you pull them out.
Well, is this how you came across the topic? I mean, if you've got children, obviously it's come up, but how did you end up getting involved in this topic and being so passionate that you will walk down the streets of foreign cities and give interviews to the press about it?
Yeah, so my kids have never been affected by this. And I see this as a cult, really, that has affected the entire Western world. I came across this term puberty blockers, I think, on Twitter back in 2019. And at the time, my kids were 7 and 9. I have 2 girls. And I thought, what the heck are these? That doesn't sound good. And of course, they're exactly what they sound like. We're blocking puberty in perfectly healthy children. Stopping the development of perfectly healthy kids. That's totally insane. Not just that, we're altering their bodies. We're turning them into sterilized, mutilated, anorgasmic, lifelong pharmaceutical patients and calling this love. So I wanted to learn all about this to protect my own kids. But the more I learned, the worse it got. And I just felt a calling to do something about it, because I'm not going to look back at my life and say I knew about this greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine, and I could have done something about it, which I am doing something about it. But I wasn't going to look back at my life with regret because I did nothing.